All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the focus on the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board for the statewide winery order, which is the general waste discharge requirements for winery process water. We'll refer to this as the order, general order, permit, things like that, but it's all the same intensive purpose for today. And like mentioned, today our focus is on the San Diego Regional Board, or Region 9. This is the last webinar in our summer winery order series. So thanks for joining us. We know everyone's really busy and we really appreciate you engaging today. A little bit about Zoom. This is a Zoom webinar, so attendees come in with video off and audio off, and we'll be using the Q&A function today to answer questions. And so we're recording the presentations, but not the Q&A session today. And although we don't have the anonymous setting on, when you submit a question, we're not going to release the submitter name or the question in the actual Q&A box. What we're going to do is verbally go over the answers and read off the questions when we do that session. And if you need to leave, just hit that little red hexagon end function. So today our speakers are myself. I'm Laura Wardrop. I'm with the Waste Discharge Requirements Program here at the State Water Board. I'm joined by Jennifer Chen, who's a Water Resource Control Engineer in WDRs, and Rebecca Greiner, who's an Environmental Scientist in WDRs. We also have the San Diego Regional Board team on to present, and they'll be introducing themselves later. So just real quick, the flow of the agenda today is a little bit about the winery order in general from State Board. Then the Region 9 will go through their specific slides about implementation in Region 9. And then I'll do a little quick wrap before we go into Q&A. And right before we go into Q&A, we'll be taking a little break. So and then we'll go right into those questions. And feel free to put your questions in the Q&A function at any time, but we're going to go through them at the end. So before I hand it off, I wanted to talk a little bit about who the water boards are. We get confused a lot with the Department of Water Resources. So the State Water Resource Control Board and the 9 regional water quality control boards, think of us as the water quality agency, where DWR is more on water supply. The regional boards, like State Board's the headquarters, and the regional boards are semi-autonomous offices around the state that have jurisdiction over very specific geographic basin planning areas in the state for implementing their water quality basin plans. But collectively, our mission is to protect water quality and beneficial uses of California's waters, such as fishing, swimming, drinking, supply. And we do this through a lot of different regulatory mechanisms, and those are established in the federal as well as the state legislation and laws. And the one we're talking about in specific today is waste discharge requirements, which comes from the California Water Code authorities. And when it comes to the California Water Code, there's a lot of different sections, and there's waste discharge requirements that require the submittal of a report of waste discharge. And it's not just specific to the winery order. There are thousands of sites in California that have waste discharge requirements, where waste discharge to land from wineries is one of those. And the regional boards do have several existing winery general waste discharge requirements or individual WDRs for wineries. But today we are focused specifically on implementation of the statewide winery order. So there's 9 regional boards and there's the state board, and we do coordinate a lot, but we do have specific roles. State board, where I work, it's more on the side of implementation statewide. We do a lot of framework building, and we do a lot of implementation support for the regions for these statewide projects. But the regions, they're more the primary contact for dischargers or the regulated community, and they do the permit reviews, approvals, inspections, enforcement. And each region has a specific way of doing things. Like I was mentioning, they have specific water quality control plans. And so when they have these statewide projects, they also have a way to integrate those into their basin plans in implementation that's region specific. So if you're not sure what regional board jurisdiction your site or facility is in, we do have a map tool, which is linked on this slide. And it's also going to be linked in the chat, and it'll be available when we post these slides. And you can go there and search for your site regional jurisdiction by address or location. So thank you, and I'll put that in the chat, and I'm going to hand it to Jennifer Chen.
Thanks, Laurel. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jennifer at the State Water Board. First, let's talk a little bit about why we're doing these webinars. The winery order was adopted in 2021, and we're now in the implementation phase. That means we're actively accepting applications, we're enrolling wineries, and over the last few years, we've done quite a bit of outreach. We've sent letters to wineries, we made an eligibility survey, we've done presentations, and now we're doing these webinars. We also have more outreach planned for later this year that you'll hear about more later on this presentation. We've also been answering a lot of questions. We often get the same or similar ones. We've also recognized that we have a mix of winery dischargers. Some of you may be more comfortable and experienced with WDRs or waste discharge requirements. Many of you might be familiar to the water board's permitting in general, but maybe not specifically to WDRs. And some may be brand new to the water board, the WDR program, or even the winery order. Our target audience for these webinars are those folks familiar with the winery's operations and will be doing the actual implementation work, like the application. So for example, these might be the winery owners, operators, and maybe even environmental compliance officers for those larger wineries or ones with multiple facilities. This also includes industry professionals like consultants and industry groups. And so the main focus here is really, what do I need to do? When do I do it? What comes next? And if I need help, who do I talk to? So the purpose of these webinars really is to really help get everyone on the same page. We want to try to answer the frequently asked questions, help inform and prepare dischargers, and help reduce confusion around the order. Also importantly, we want to provide resources so you have what you need, or you at least know where to find it when you do need it. A question we get pretty often is, don't I already have a permit? So let's talk a little bit about how the winery order fits into the water board's world. The WDR program issues and manages permits and conditional waivers related to wastewater discharges to land to protect water quality. The WDR program is only one of many programs within the water boards. So these are all separate programs and each has its own water quality concerns. So for example, there's stormwater, irrigated lands, recycled water, and many more. Wineries will need separate permits from all the programs applicable to a winery's operations. The winery order is only one permit out of many permits within the WDR program. So keep in mind that there's not a winery program or a winery order program. It's the WDR program. The order was adopted by the state board, but it's implemented by the regional boards. It's a statewide general order, which means that the same permit can be used by all the regions for wineries throughout California. This is different from, say, a regional general order, which is a permit that can only be used for wineries within a certain regional board's boundaries. So as you heard earlier, we do coordinate. The state board and regional boards work closely together on the order, but we each have our own separate roles. The state board generally provides information and tools that can be used statewide, and we also answer general questions. The regional boards, on the other hand, are a winery's direct contact. The regions are the ones who can answer your site-specific questions or region-specific questions. They're the ones that review your application, and they also oversee the order compliance. If you email the state board mailbox, you may notice that we'll sometimes give you an answer, but we'll also suggest that you contact the regional board. This is so they can answer and discuss any specifics of your site, and to also begin building that relationship with them. Another question we get a lot is, where do I start? How do I get started? So first, take a look at your winery order. Try to figure out if you're eligible and if you need coverage by looking at the definitions and the tier breakdown in the order. Determine your tier. Calculate, measure, or project the amount of winery processed water you'll be discharging each year. So remember, when we say discharge, we mean discharge to land. That's processed water going into a pond, being line applied for reuse, or discharged to a subsurface disposal area. I want to highlight the word project because you do want to look at how much processed water you're discharging now, but also think ahead to whether this amount will be changing in the short or the long term. If you're still unsure or you just want to confirm, you can always fill out the eligibility survey on the winery order website. Next, we get asked, when do I apply? If you're an existing winery with no WDRs, apply now. If you already have individual WDRs, a conditional waiver, or you're covered by a regional general order, you can either apply now or see what the deadlines are for your specific region's enrollment priority. If you've already been notified by the regional board to either apply or transfer over from the existing permit, look at the deadline in that notice. If you're a brand new winery, you have to apply for coverage at least 180 days before you begin operations. This is because you need authorization to discharge your winery processed water. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some things to consider as you begin planning. First, assess and gather information for your winery, facility, or site as it currently stands. Now think about any facility or process changes you have planned and when you expect to do them. So for example, are you planning to grow your operations or maybe put in a pond? So what we're asking about here are material changes. A material change is something that will change the character, location, or volume of your discharge. You're required to notify the regional board before you make this type of change and to submit a new application. Now compare requirements. What are the winery order requirements for your current facility and how will this change after you make your facility improvements? So for example, maybe you're in a tier 2 now, but after you expand, you'll be in tier 3, or maybe you realize you'll still be in tier 2. So you have to decide for yourself whether it makes sense to apply for your current facility and submit a second application in the future, or if it makes sense to include all those plan changes into one application now. So think about planning horizon. Are you planning to make changes that go into effect in 2 years or 20 years? A helpful tool to help you compare scenarios and the different permit requirements is the compliance calendar tool on the winery order website. It's a spreadsheet where you can select your tier, your site features, and whether it's new or existing, and it'll show you which winery order requirements would apply and their deadline. Okay, so now that you're ready to apply, how do you apply? The winery order has an application section with enrollment details. The application itself has 3 parts: the notice of intent, the technical report, and the filing fee, which is equal to the annual permitting fee. Existing wineries also have an extra piece. These dischargers need to also propose a compliance schedule and include that in the technical report for the regional board to review. The proposed compliance schedule lays out any facility improvements or changes that need to be made to bring your facility into full compliance of the winery order. Also take a look at the technical provision section in the order for any specific upgrades that might apply to your site and their deadline. So keep in mind again that this compliance schedule is only for existing wineries, which are those that began operations before the winery order was adopted on January 20th, 2021. Anything new that is going in or constructed is expected to already be fully in compliance with the winery order. We sometimes get questions on turnaround time and when will I be enrolled? The short answer is that it depends, since this can be affected by factors specific to your site or maybe specific to your region. So one of the goals of these webinars is actually to help improve turnaround time. We want to give you the information and resources you need to submit more complete applications. After you apply, it's really important to keep an eye out for data requests from the region boards and to please respond to those promptly. It's pretty common for the regions to ask for missing or more detailed information to help complete your application. This will really help the regional boards review your application more quickly, determine it's complete, and issue you a notice of applicability or NOA. This NOA is what authorizes you to discharge your winery waste. Okay, lastly, what if I still have questions? Where can I get more help? Start with the winery order webpage. It has detailed information. You'll find resources, tools, guides, and links to things. You'll also find contact information for the state board and the regional board. You can email the state board winery mailbox with any general questions on the order, and you can email your particular regional board with any questions related to your facility specifically, or if you want to know more about our regional board's procedural requirements. You can also reach out for external support, like other wineries in your area, winery groups, industry groups, or consultants. It's a great place to exchange information. There's also a few instances where you may need a professional certification or professional signature to comply with an order requirement. The important thing here is to be informed, know your facility, get familiar with the winery order requirements that apply to your site, and this will really help you find the right help. Okay, so we're narrowing in on the order. We've talked about the water boards, the WDR program, and also how to get started. Now let's take a look at the winery order itself. We're sometimes asked, why is the winery order so long? Or do I need to include everything? Or do I need to do everything that's required in it? So a big reason of why the order is so long is because it contains a lot of flexibility. That flexibility was intentional and also by request, because every winery does things a little differently. The order covers multiple treatment disposal options, has requirement off-ramps, it has triggers, and that means some requirements are not active and may never become active unless something triggers it. The order also has extended timeframes for planning and for bringing existing wineries into full compliance. It's pretty rare, but not impossible, but that would be unusual for a winery where all the order requirements are applicable to it. That would mean your facility uses all the treatment disposal options. You didn't or you couldn't take any of the off-ramps, and you somehow triggered all of the additional requirements. So again, this is pretty rare. The winery order is structured such as the requirements fall into these overarching categories. They're usually taken sequentially and will funnel you into the appropriate requirements for your site. So the top level split is your tier. Is your winery exempt or in tiers 1, 2, 3, or 4? Next, what disposal methods do you use at your site? If you have a pond, those requirements would apply. If you don't have subsurface, you can skip those requirements. When did your winery begin operating? Is it considered an existing or new facility? Are you applying because you're expanding something? Next, are you discharging processed water, processed solids to land, or both? So look at those requirements. There are also water quality considerations. For example, there could be water quality sampling results that trigger additional monitoring or maybe additional reporting like salt or nitrogen control plans. Okay, so let's take a look at the winery order itself. You may have noticed that the order doesn't have traditional sections or chapter numbers. That's because it's structured so that each individual requirement has a unique identifier, and that way it can be called out directly. The identifier is made up of alternating numbers and letters, and each sublevel is also indented for that visual reminder. So keep in mind that these paragraphs can be short or sometimes can get pretty long, and you may have to either look up or even back a couple of pages to find the top level or the beginning of a requirement. So here are two examples. This first one is from finding, and the call out is winery order page 3, finding 12.A. So it's referring to this orange box, and it's because of the sentence structure, parts 1 through 4 are included. So this next example is from discharge specification, and I just picked one with a lot of sublevels. The requirement in the green box has a call out beginning with page 36, specification D.1.A.II.C.1. And that'll point you to this green box. Okay, so let's talk really quickly about navigating the winery order. So I would never discourage anyone from reading the order from cover to cover, but it's pretty long and we're talking about getting started today. So beginning with the table of contents, it's a great tool and will really help you find what you need. Once you get more familiar with the order, please use the keyword search feature within the PDF, and that'll really jump you to the exact paragraphs that you need. The order has 3 main parts: findings, hereby ordered, and certification. Findings has the background information, rationale, and more detailed descriptions of things. Hereby ordered has what to do, what not to do, and also compliance timeframes and milestones. When you first get started, you want to look at the applicability and application sections. Those are these orange arrows because these sections apply to all facilities. In applicability, you'll find the definition of winery waste, how the tiers are determined, and the cutoffs for the different tiers. In the application section, you'll find details on how to apply, what enrollment means, and it describes the notice of applicability and its pieces. If you take a look at the green arrows next, these are the sections that only apply if you have certain features. So for example, if you have a pond, take a look at that section. If you don't have a pond, skip that section. So while you're reading the winery order, keep those overarching categories in mind for your facility. So the requirements are organized by those categories. So please pay attention to the heading names and also the beginning of requirements, because they'll state whether it's for an existing or new facility, or maybe it only applies to tiers 2 or 4 or etc. The hereby ordered section is set up the exact same way. The discharge prohibitions apply to everyone. When you look at the effluent limitations, discharge specifications, and provisions, some of those sections are for everybody and some only apply if you have a certain feature or you're in a certain category. So I do want to point out that there are two discharge specification sections, one for only tier 1 and one for tiers 2, 3, and 4. Also in the technical provision sections, you'll find compliance timeframes for certain facility improvements and also requirements that come into play if they're triggered. Lastly, take a look at the attachments, attachments A, B, C, and G. These are the glossary, notice of intent, technical report outline, and the monitoring and reporting program attachments. So really important, especially for the technical report and the monitoring and reporting program, keep those overarching categories in mind so you're looking at the right sections for your site. And with that, thank you very much. And here's Rebecca with more information on application and enrollment.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca, and I'm with the State Board. So far we've gone over looking at the winery order, when to apply, and how to start planning. And now we're going to go into a little bit more detail about how to apply and resources for help. As Jen mentioned earlier, there is a self-guided eligibility survey if you are unsure whether the winery order is applicable to you. Some regions might be using this as a way to show that your facility is exempt. So please reach out to your regional board if you need more information on that process. So the application process or the enrollment process starts with a submittal of an application package. Jen mentioned earlier that there are 3 pieces. There's the electronic notice of intent, which is submitted via the California Integrated Water Quality System, also known as CWICS. There's the technical report and other supporting documentation. This documentation is attached to the electronic notice of intent. We'll kind of show that a little bit later in a couple slides. And the third part is a signed notice of intent and fee submitted to the regional board. The application fee is equal to the annual fee, but this fee changes each year. Important information about who can sign the notice of intent is in the help guide, and we'll provide a link to that later in these slides. So after the notice of intent and documentation and fees are submitted, the regional board will review all of that information and they will reach out as needed. It's important to get responses back to the regional board as soon as you can and be responsive. That will also help with expediting the enrollment process. And once that's done and all of the pieces and information has been reviewed by the regional board, they will issue a notice of applicability. That notice of applicability will include your tier determination, your monitoring and reporting program, and if relevant, an approved compliance schedule. So as a quick summary, the discharger, you will submit a notice of intent electronically via CWICS with all documentation and the technical report. You'll also submit that signed document and the fee. Once that's complete, the regional board will review it all and then issue the notice of applicability. So a little bit more about the electronic notice of intent. It must be completed online via CWICS. Each notice of intent will be given a unique identifier or form ID that's shown here in these orange boxes. This number is extremely important. It is used throughout the entire enrollment process, especially when it comes to fees. This number will be used if you need to resubmit or continue the notice of intent. So be sure to write that number down somewhere. And so the orange arrows are showing the questionnaire and attachments tabs. The questionnaire tab is where you'll answer questions about your ponds or your subsurface disposal area. And then the attachments tab is where you will include your technical report, as well as any other documentation or that compliance schedule, if applicable. On this slide is the help guide and the link to the electronic notice of intent. These will be available once these slides are posted. It's important that the help guide is looked at least for the signature portion. That is one of the common issues with these notice of intents is incorrect person signs it. So be sure to give that a gander when you have a moment. So it's been mentioned a couple of times about a technical report. We really want to emphasize that this is required for all notice of intents and applications. Attachment C has an outline of the technical report, so that will help you determine what pieces are needed based on your tier. If you do not upload or attach the technical report, once you get to the form completion check piece of the electronic notice of intent, an error will appear and you will not be able to submit. So you'll, in the attachments tab, that's where that will be attached and you'll indicate that as the document type. For resources and help, we do have a dedicated winery order website. Here's a QR code that you can scan with your phone or the link directly on here. This is where you can find a lot of guidance documents, news and information, and tools. You will also sign up for our electronic notification email list here, kind of as shown in that lower right-hand corner. So the website is split, the website is split up into tabs. So here kind of lists the resources and guidance documents that are linked on these tabs. The two really important ones for enrollment will be under the enrollment and fees tab. It's the notice of intent help guide and the fee payment help guide. These documents may be able to answer a lot of the questions that pop up throughout the process. Again, that also has information on how to use the form ID when you're submitting your payment or how to ensure that the correct person signs that notice of intent. There are a lot of resources on the resources tab that also will be beneficial throughout compliance, determining information, and we do have a winery order contacts tab. This tab outlines the contact email addresses for each regional board. These should be used when you have a specific question, as been said, a specific question to that region or to your winery or facility. General questions can be sent to the state board. And if you, as mentioned earlier in the chat, there is a link to the map tool to help kind of determine which regional board you have. And with that, I will hand it off to the San Diego Regional Board staff.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm going to start sharing our presentation. Can you see the presentation? If someone thumbs up.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the statewide winery order workshop today. We are representing the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board. Our region is the southernmost region and include all San Diego County, Riverside County, and Southern Orange County. Our unit regulates water and wastewater discharges in accordance with the California Water Code. Our unit manager is Fasayo, and my name is Mahsa. I also work on water and wastewater treatment plants, on-site wastewater treatment system such as campground, small domestic system, CAFO, conditional waivers, and more. My colleague Brandon is also here with us. He used to work on the project I just mentioned, but has recently been primarily focused on recycled water projects. If you are operating a winery or vineyard, you may require enrollment and compliance with these three regulatory mechanisms. If you are disposing of winery processed wastewater on-site, such as septic tank, irrigation, lined, or online ponds, you may need to enroll under winery order or winery waiver. If you are making wine or growing grapes on site, you may need to enroll under industrial stormwater permit or general agriculture permit. As Jen mentioned in her presentation, the facility's process wastewater flow determines the tier. If it's less than 10,000 gallons per year, it would be exempt. However, based on the findings in the applicability section 13, the Regional Water Board determined that a large concentration in an area pose a threat to water quality. As a result, facilities located in Temecula Valley may no longer qualify for exempt status and require to submit an application for general order winery and will be covered as a Tier 1 facility. This map shows the Temecula wine country area with the city boundary marked by black lines and the wine country boundary highlighted in purple. Highway 79 runs through the southern side of the map with Borer Road in the north, and to the east it covers part of the Glonoke Valley, and to the west it includes a portion of Long Valley. You may qualify for the winery waiver, order number R9 2024-001, conditional waivers of waste discharge requirements for low-threat discharges in the San Diego region under waiver number 3, discharges of winery processed water to lined evaporation ponds at the small wineries, which is defined as a winery with a vineyard, wine production facility, and wine tasting rooms. Wineries that have additional ancillary facilities, such as restaurant, special occasion facility, or commercial lodging facilities, are not eligible for enrollment in this waiver. In order to be eligible for the winery order, dischargers must comply with the general and specific conditions of this waiver. Discharges under winery waiver are not expected to pose a threat to the quality of waters of the state. If you enroll under the waiver, you need to submit a complete notice of intent or NOI and follow certain conditions, such as waste and wastewater other than winery processed water must not be discharged to on-site evaporation ponds. You need to minimize the use of cleaning chemicals, and water softening devices, canister-type water softener, or similar alternative should be used to prevent the discharge of salt brine. Large solids should be separated from winery processed water through redundant screening and removal system such as screen floor drains, rotary drum screen, or settling basin. On-site evaporation ponds used for disposal of winery processed water must be lined. And at this time, the waiver winery does not require any monitoring, and the enrollees under this waiver are currently not required to pay a fee. As I mentioned before, if you are producing wine on site, you need to file for the Industrial Stormwater General Permit, which falls under the NPDES permit. But if you send your grapes out for processing, there is no need to file for it. For more information, you can reach out through the contact information provided on the slide to our colleague Tony Felix in our Stormwater Management Unit. If you are growing grapes on site, then you need to enroll under the General Agriculture Permit. Commercial irrigated operations, such as vineyards that produce crops with the intent to make profit, are required to enroll under this permit. You must meet at least one of the following criteria to be considered as making a profit. File IRS Schedule F Form 1040 on federal taxes, or receive agriculture water rate from water purveyor, or pesticides handling certificate number. For more information regarding the agriculture permit, you can contact our colleague Kaylin and Abigail in our unit through the contact information as you can see on the slide. As we discussed earlier, the statewide winery order is based on tiers. Additionally, the wineries that are not discharging to land, but instead are holding and hauling the waste to a permitted wastewater treatment plant, are not required to enroll under the winery order. If the eligibility survey shows that you should apply for the winery, or you already know that your winery should be applied, you can start submitting an electronic notice of intent application through the state civics database, as Rebecca mentioned. Staff will review your documents and will let you know if anything is missing or more documentation or information is needed. Please see the State Winery Order webpage for guidance and other helpful information regarding the submittal of ENOI. Here we want to provide you with a sense of how much time the process can take. The first step is the submittal of application through the electronic notice of intent. Once we receive the application, staff conduct a completion check within 30 days and notify the applicant of the status. If any items are missing, staff will inform the applicant and further processing is typically placed on hold. Then staff conduct a technical review, which includes assessing permit compliance, evaluating design, and reviewing compliance schedule. Most of the time, we will have clarifying questions or comments. These questions or comments are typically sent to the applicant through the email, and staff will wait for the applicant's response before proceeding. During final permit verification, a civics account is set up and staff performs a final confirmation of the fee and the signed application form by the legal responsible person. In the final step, the NOA is prepared and issued, and it will be signed by the executive officer. NOA that we issued will include the monitoring requirements specific to our region for each tier based on sample monitoring and reporting requirement in the winery order. If you have questions about your winery's current permitting or the status of your ENOI application, please email our region's general email. We do have useful links on our website. You can email me and I will send them to you. This contact information can also be found on the State Board's Winery Program webpage. Our region's waste discharge requirements webpage also has links to the conditional waivers and the state winery order. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I'm going to get my screen to share. Perfect. Okay. Becca, can you see the screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So before we get into Q&A, I wanted to go through a couple closing slides. This is the last in our summer webinar series on the winery order, and we'll be working on getting the recordings and the slides posted on our public program webpage or winery order webpage. And then we're looking at doing another set of outreach. In 22 and 23, we sent 3,000 winery business letters out in California to let wineries and winery businesses know about the winery order requirements. We're doing a very detailed look at the businesses that didn't respond to those letters and trying to reach out to ones that look like they may have potential or ability to discharge winery waste to land. And hopefully we can get those letters out by spring of 2025, but we'll see how the timing goes. So that's kind of the statewide focus. And like many of the regions have shared over these summer webinar series, is the priority of enrollment is definitely wineries that don't have any winery waste discharge coverage, as well as wineries that are new. So wineries that are enrolling for the first time. And then if there's any kind of waivers expiring, those wineries that need coverage would also be a priority for some regions. So there's another bucket coming up. So there's going to be wineries that are just now starting to enroll in the statewide order, and those wineries are looking at submitting their application package and getting their site ready in preparation for meeting those requirements. And then there's another bucket of wineries that have regional waste discharge requirement coverage already, and they'd be looking at being notified by the regional boards if this order may apply to their operations. So for example, what Masha was sharing about their waiver, you can always inquire and see if anything's going to be changing on your status to your waiver coverage for your evaporation ponds, if it applies to you. And so, if you have been notified by the regional board that this order does apply to your operations, you'd be definitely consulting with them on any requirements and implementing those requests or necessary parts of your application. And then the third bucket, last but not least, is wineries that already have active coverage. And there's a question about this in the chat we'll get to. So some facilities are actually in implementation. They're doing their monitoring, they've done their facility upgrades or are working on those, and they're actually looking at their first round of annual reporting or potential monitoring reports. And those are due April 1st of the reporting year. And so, for example, the second semi-annual groundwater monitoring report for tiers 4s are due April 1st, as well as annual report for all tiers. There's a typo in this table in the actual order. It says March 1, but the order due date is April 1st. So there's wineries that are in that bucket as well. So that gets us to Q&A, and I'll have kind of a very generalized contact slide I'll share here in a second. But this is the time that we take a break, and feel free, if you haven't put your questions in the Q&A yet, to pop open that Q&A icon and type in your question. We'll be looking at those and starting to prepare answers on our break, and then when we come back, we'll be verbally putting those questions out there as well as the responses. Just a note that we aren't recording the Q&A section, so I'm going to pop up the contact slide really quick for the recording, and then we'll go to break.